council on Tuesday, June 25th at 6 p.m. in the Eastpointe City Hall. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico. Lucido.
Yes, here.
Kleinfeld.
Here.
Owens.
Here.
Pixley.
Here. We have an initial hearing of the public, and there is no one here tonight. So the hearing of the public is very short. We have no one. The second item is the adoption of the resolution number 1885. This relates to the charter amendment. And so, Mr. Albright, do you want to take this, please? Did you develop this resolution?
I'd be happy to discuss it, Madam Mayor. This is the proposed charter amendment related to the city manager's qualifications. This was discussed at the last regularly scheduled council meeting. I've gone ahead and incorporated the changes per the council's request. I've also talked to George Elworth from the Attorney General's office last Wednesday, and he is aware that the council would be voting on this resolution at a special meeting this evening, and so he'll be looking for this resolution if it does pass this evening. He's also aware, although he hasn't received a copy of the proposed resolution, he's aware of its contents, and so I informed him that if this does pass, that we'd be forwarding him a copy this week.
Mr. Albert, I did have one question. State law, and I think also federal law, states that anyone can live anywhere they'd like. So is it so necessary that it actually says shall reside in the city of Eastpointe or not? I mean, do you have to refer to the residency in this amendment? Can you just leave residency out?
Yeah, you can leave. It should shall be a citizen of the United States of America.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're already proposing to remove.
Yeah, that's
already
eliminating
crossed
Yes,
out.
we're
eliminating the residency requirements and to file a bond.
I understand that.
Yeah, if you see that the
But this said down here, submitted to the electors
Right.
in the following form.
yeah, and that's eliminating the requirements, providing the manager shall have at least 1 year experience as a manager or assistant city manager, shall reside in the city of Eastpointe and file a bond. So those requirements, which are under the current charter language, would be eliminated.
And I think, if I understand correctly, the mayor's concern was that it seemed more complicated than it is in the form proposed to the residents. Is that what you were concerned about?
Right, because if it's not required, why do you put it in there? Because if I'm looking at the ballot thinking that I'm a resident that doesn't know exactly why this is here, what am I voting on? Am I voting yes or no that you have to have 1 year experience? Or am I voting yes or no related to the residency requirement?
If
And
the council would like to change around the language that would be submitted to the electors, the council can certainly do that this evening.
So what you were proposing then is that the second form is the one that you prefer, that they only have to have 1 year?
No, that it be removed from the language in the charter. Maybe it would be clearer, Rich, if we could do it this way, where if it said something along the lines of be amended to eliminate the 3 following requirements and then actually have number, like in parentheses, 1 year previous experience, 2 the residency, and 3. Would that make it clearer to everyone then? That what it's doing is eliminating all of those?
Well,
I think it would be. I have a problem in eliminating the experience. I know you and I have talked, and I've talked with other people saying that if you were to get someone, as an example, that ran a department in the county level or something, that say it was finance or say it was voting, I think when you go to a larger group, their experience is pretty singular. It's pretty focused on one topic, and they really don't have the experience of a broad thing. As an example, if you were to get somebody that came from Sterling Heights, and they had been in finance. And Sterling Heights is, what, 3 times the size of Eastpointe? But they had been in finance forever. They ran the department. So if they're doing hiring and firing, they're aware of HR procedures and so forth. But I think it's very, very possible that they would become so isolated as the department head of that department that they wouldn't be knowledgeable with all the different cross-sections that are involved in a city that's a smaller size, because I think their experience has to be much broader in a smaller location, because they do many jobs instead of just focusing on one.
I understand that point. I guess I know I've told you my concern is eliminating qualified candidates, because I think we've run into that twice now during our searches where the people doing the search, or even us during the first search, felt like there was a good person there, but the charter doesn't allow it, so we remove them from consideration.
As an example, when we hired Duchesne, there was another candidate who had retired from Ford Motor and had a great deal of administrative experience. So he was well acquainted with finance, he was well acquainted with a lot of other things. But, and then he had gone to a smaller city, much smaller city, and he had worked as a city manager for, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, something like that. So his experience managing a city was far less, but it was much broader. It was just that Steve had much more experience, that was a much more broad experience as city management than the other qualified candidate.
I understand your concern too, but I think that, let's say you had like a human resource director in a bigger city, I think that they would be qualified, depending on their experience and how long they've been in that position, to possibly be a good city manager. I don't think that we should eliminate those people, or even eliminate the possibility of interviewing those people because they don't have the actual 1 year of city manager experience.
I think that would be a mistake. I have to disagree with you, Sarah. I very rarely disagree with you, but I have to disagree with you on that one. I think you have to have at least a year of city manager experience, or maybe 3 to 5 of assistant city manager. Because I think you have to get the flavor of negotiating contracts, you need finance, you need a great deal of other things that are woven into the experience that a 1 year city manager or 2 or 3 years of assistant city manager has.
I just think that limits the pool of candidates too much, because if a qualified city manager is doing well, they're not going to leave a current posting somewhere, although city managers, it's a complicated relationship. They move around all the time. But it's also my understanding that after a lot of the restructuring that happened in a lot of cities, I think especially smaller ones, after the crash, a lot of cities don't even have assistant city managers anymore because they couldn't keep that many administrators. And I just think it narrows the pool so much.
Well, as an example, in one of the people that came for, and he was, I think he moved up the ladder. I think he was within the top 5 at one time, and I can't remember which group we had interviewed. But most of his experience was all in police. We had another one that his experience was all in the fire department. So they have negotiations and they have HR experience and so forth. But really, they don't have a tremendous amount of finance and clerk experience and those types of things. And I think that you're really doing a disservice if you don't have a well-rounded person with at least a minimum of 1 year.
And I do understand your concern that they do need to be a well-rounded person, but some of those people might have different experience in different departments, and they might have gone back to school to become a city manager. And I feel like as a council, we can ask the right questions to see if they have those experiences.
Monique, you've been real quiet.
Because I agree with what you said about having that 1 year experience as well. Learning about contracts and things like that is essential to a big part of being a manager, a city manager. Even if y'all wanted to lower it a little bit, because I do like opening the pool to, giving people a chance to have a job. Sometimes it's hard to get 1 year experience when nobody will hire you if you don't have experience. So I get that whole part of it. But at the same time, to run a city any size, 1 year experience of having some type of knowledge, because when you go to school, I haven't been in school for public administration, and so, Mrs. Sabota, if you can help me with this, I don't know if you went to school, but, I mean, when you go to school, you learn the basic things in, the book, but until you actually sit in that seat, it's totally different.
It's theory in school, it's practice when you get a job.
Right. So saying that, I think the theory in school would be so much different than actually when you sit in the seat and you're over different people and their jobs and their livelihood and making sure you understand it. So,
Well, I don't think, I think council would have the ability to deliberate and ask those questions to find out if someone has experience. But I think specifically saying it must be a city manager or assistant city manager just ties the city's hands in being able to choose a qualified candidate. I don't think any of us are suggesting we would want to hire someone who wasn't well-rounded or was lacking in certain areas that we saw as a concern. But I just think the specific, you must have been a city manager before, it just limits our pool so much. I think it just ties our hands.
and or add to it, have a 1 year experience as an assistant manager or have a bachelor's degree in public administration or master's.
Well, I
Well, we
think,
have to
something
have,
like
they
that.
have to have a master's, don't they, when we post a job usually?
In the charter.
No, not in the charter, but usually when we post for the job, isn't a.
We're talking about the charter, though. We're changing the charter how we want it to be as far as opening it up.
this is,
So,
this is the experience.
so
Well, take a vote.
Madam Mayor.
We need a motion if you
Yeah,
want to vote.
Madam Mayor,
I know that.
Councilmember DeMonico did personally contact me last week, and he did indicate that he was, although he's obviously not here this evening, he wanted me to pass along that he's in agreement with the proposed language.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But he's not here.
That is correct. But he still wanted me to pass along that information.
All right, make a motion.
Well,
Say what you want it to read.
well, if the link, I don't know if it's, I'll make a motion, but is,
You have two different, you have what the charter amendment would be, or what the charter would look like after it was passed by the voters. And that's actually in the first section. That's what the new charter language would look like. Below that is how it would be presented to the voters. And that's what the Attorney General will be looking at as well, to see that they're comfortable with that language.
So you didn't want to add that the manager shall have at least 1 year experience as a manager or assistant manager and or a bachelor's, a minimum of a bachelor's,
Or you
public
can't,
administration.
most often you would never become a manager unless you had that bachelor's, a minimum.
Well, a master's then.
I mean, I wouldn't want to add that just because I don't think I would ever vote for someone who didn't have a baseline education for the job.
But just
And I think
remember,
we've always kind of put, whenever we've
But just-
posted for the position, that's a
just
requirement.
remember, you have an election coming up, and you may not be the one that's gonna be interviewing these people. It might be somebody else that's running for mayor.
No, I'm aware of that. I think this is a damaging provision overall for the city. I think it's
I think it's really scary.
because I don't think the result's going to be that council's going to hire someone completely unqualified for the job. I'm not concerned that a board will do that.
I mean, it does limit it to a year, but you're not even opening it up a little bit to have some type of,
You know, it is a possibility, well, it's not a possibility. You would still have, it is a possibility that you might be the only person that ends up on council.
Yeah, you're right, it could just be Monique. She might
Right.
she might be the last
It might be just be Monique and two other new people,
three.
three new people.
No, Cardy would still have his seat.
Oh, that's right.
Cardy would still have his seat, so yeah.
But if he got elected as mayor, you might have three. I'm just looking
Right,
at all
there could be three,
possibilities,
there could
right?
be, there could be.
You could have three brand-new
Three
people
brand-new
on
people.
council, and they've never selected anyone before. So it becomes scary unless you have the requirements that you really want to see?
If I may suggest maybe some sort of compromise, if the council is looking to hire someone that has some sort of experience in government, then maybe you'd want to change the language to make it more general instead of position-specific, maybe X number of years of experience in, name the form of government.
I think what I was just thinking would, instead of striking it altogether, is perhaps adding a provision that says or similar qualifying experience. I don't know, Rich, if that would be too vague.
So would that be at the end of the second sentence of the actual charter language? He shall be chosen by the council solely on the basis of his executive and administrative qualifications or similar experience?
Or at least 1 year experience as a manager. It doesn't have to be a city or village.
I think it's got to be city.
Well, actually, Rich, I'm glad you pointed that out because I wasn't looking to that first sentence. I mean, does council not feel that he shall be chosen by council solely on the basis of his executive and administrative qualifications to be sufficient guidance in terms of having a baseline qualifications for?
So I guess I'm confused because what you want the proposed amendment to look like is the bottom one, but I like the top one much better.
That's the actual, that will be the charter language, and I'll read it. If the proposed amendment is submitted to, if they pass it, how it will read, the manager shall be the chief administrative officer of the city. He shall be chosen by the council solely on the basis of his executive and administrative qualifications, and he shall be a citizen of the United States of America. That's how the amended language would read, if it's passed by the voters. If the council passes a resolution and it's then submitted to the voters, and it passes, that's how it would read.
I think that would be an improvement to the current charter.
And how it's going to be submitted to the electors is, shall the charter of the City of Eastpointe, Chapter 3, Section 18, be amended to eliminate the requirements providing the manager shall have at least 1 year experience as a manager or assistant city manager, that he shall reside in the City of Eastpointe and also file a bond. So right now, those are the requirements per the existing charter language. Those three requirements, if they were passed, would then be eliminated, and the new amended charter language would read, again, the manager shall be the chief administrative officer of the city. He shall be chosen by the council solely on the basis of his executive and administrative qualifications, and he shall be a citizen of the United States of America. That's how it would read if it was passed.
All right, I still think that the question that's proposed, the proposed amendment, is confusing because they're voting on three things, but it only says one thing, yes or no.
No, they're voting to eliminate three things.
Right. But what if they want to keep one of the three and not the other two?
Well, that's not how if the council but that's how the council is submitting it to the voters. The council's making that decision through a resolution this evening.
Oh, so it doesn't have to be exactly like this, then? They can vote on each part if they want.
No.
It's gonna be how the council, now, if you had say a citizen or a resident who wanted a particular charter amendment brought before the voters, there's a particular way to do that. What this is the council, the city council saying, we would like to amend our city charter, but we can't do that on our own. We have to come up with a proposed charter amendment, and then ultimately the voters, the residents of the city of Eastpointe, they have to vote to approve that. The council can't make those types of decisions because it doesn't have the authority to do so. If there is actually going to be a change to the city charter, that has to be done by the residents.
So
of the
can
city.
we divide the second part so that it says, eliminate the requirement providing the manager shall have at least 1 year experience as a manager or assistant manager, yes or no? Shall reside in the city of Eastpointe, yes or no? File a bond, yes or no?
No, because that's going, You could do that as a separate question, but then you'd also have to show what the proposed charter language, amended language would look like, and that would take a completely different form, and this would be a lot longer. The council could do that, but in the current form, that would not be appropriate. And I know that if we did attempt to do that, just the way this resolution is drafted, that the Attorney General would kick this back and not recommend approval to the governor.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessary to have them three separate, either, if we're not eliminating the one-year experience, I don't even know if it's necessary to have a charter amendment, because like you said, state and federal law already says that they don't have to live in the city, so I don't even know if it's necessary to change it if we're not going to eliminate the,
Those
1
other,
year experience.
those other two provisions, as I stand now, have no meaning. They're just, it was just
Well,
cleaning up the
and-
language.
And I understand that, but
Yeah.
I think it's really confusing, and I think you're gonna get some crazy votes.
Mr. Sabota, when you got done with your master's degree, how long did it take for you to get a job as a city manager?
Let's see. As an official city manager,
Official.
I got my first job as an official city manager on October 15th of 2018. Because all my previous experience was acting for one city, and then I was city administrator under a different law, not a true manager, but working in that function
Well,
in a strong mayor form of government for a long period of time.
And once you graduated, how long did it take you to find a job?
Oh, I had a job when I was in school. I had a job before I walked out of undergraduate.
Okay. But did you work as an intern already?
No,
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I could see, going back to your point about it possibly causing confusion in the ballot language, the council could certainly specifically identify those three sections that are going to be eliminated by, and I believe Councilmember Kleinfeld had indicated by putting language in there, for instance, identifying the three following, or the following three or
2,
something.
3.
And
Make
then
it
have them
more
actually
simple,
individually
yeah.
numbered. That way it would provide more clarification, so when the voter is looking at that, they can say, oh, okay, I'm voting yes or no to eliminate these three, and I'm either gonna vote yes or I'm gonna vote no.
Right.
1, 2, and 3.
Right.
well, we must as well vote, because it might not even pass, so,
There, never got a motion.
no.
I think
Yeah.
you were starting, but you never.
Well, I was hoping to get everyone on, at least get all the concerns addressed. The alternative I was considering to what you were saying, Rich, the 1, 2, and 3, I do think makes it clearer.
I agree.
If council was so inclined, we could also just strike amending the residential and the bond requirement, because it really doesn't matter. That's not why it's
And
being.
there I am, right back where my first statement is saying,
So if we instead just wanted to cut back on what was being amended,
and just use the one part without the residential requirement and filing of the bond.
So you're just removing, to eliminate the requirements providing the manager shall have at least 1 year experience
Right,
as a manager or assistant manager,
Right.
and then strike the rest of this.
right.
okay, so if we're going to do that, I'd like to go through and kind of clarify this whole thing. First paragraph, the very last section, shall reside in the city of Eastpointe, file a bond. It would just be a period after city manager and strike the rest of that.
And we should change requirements to requirement.
Yes, thank you. In the proposed language under section 18,
The only thing that would remain is that he shall be a citizen of the U.S.
yeah, I would, so where the first strikeout starts with the manager, I believe we'd have to keep that and then pick up on the shall, the next line down after
During this term, office reside in the city of Eastwood for
shall during a, exactly.
After village, it would be a period.
And
Well, we're eliminating before village.
Would you like me to read what I think you're saying so everyone can see it clearly?
yeah, I was just,
Go for it.
yeah.
Okay. The manager shall be chief administrative officer of the city. He shall be chosen by the council solely on the basis of his executive and administrative qualifications. The manager shall, during the term of office, reside in the city of Eastpointe, provided, however, he shall be a citizen of the United States of America. The manager shall file a bond satisfactory to the council.
I agree with that. And
The ballot language that I heard was, shall the charter of the city of Eastpointe, Chapter 3, Section 18, be amended to eliminate the requirement providing the manager shall have at least 1 year experience as a manager or assistant city manager?
That's what I have as well.
correct. And I'm just skimming the rest of it. I think there's no other changes that would be needed.
No.
Oh, why would
But we have to clean up the beginning, the introduction to the ordinance,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
goes
yeah,
along
yeah,
with
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
so I'm aware of that.
Why would we need to keep during his term of office reside in the city of Eastpointe?
We're not eliminating.
No, no, we were
That's
gonna
what he
keep
read.
it, we were gonna keep it so it makes it clearer for the voters on exactly what we're trying to get passed. So it's not as confusing, so they know that they're voting to eliminate the 1 year experience. And not any, so everything else can stay, because it doesn't matter anyways.
Those two things are different. 1 year experience and where you live in is two different things.
Yeah, so the question that's posed to the residents that would appear on the ballot is confusing with all those things thrown into it. So if we just decide not to amend that portion, it just simplifies the questions, or the question posed to the residents, which I'm fine with because those other changes have no effect. They're not enforceable, so
Yeah, but the average resident doesn't know that.
yeah, so a resident might think they're changing 3 things, but really they're just changing 1.
So we'll,
Just have to-
so we're gonna change the wording, so now they know they're only changing one thing, and that is the 1 year experience as a manager or assistant city manager.
It's just one requirement now as opposed to 3 different requirements that would be eliminated.
Yeah, I just hate to change something in the charter and keep something that doesn't even stand anymore.
I mean, I would be fine either way, but if it's going to confuse residents, on a practical level, I'm fine with simplifying it as well.
And if the city council decides that it's in the best interest to start proceedings for a charter review commission at some point, the Charter Review Commission could certainly look at this section at some point in the future. Another item that they may look at too is eliminating pronouns, having it gender neutral as opposed to he and she, they. So that's something that could be reserved at a later date with the Charter Revision Commission. So this way as it's standing right now, the voters would just be looking at eliminating the requirement of a manager having at least 1 year experience as a manager or assistant city manager, period.
Is there any way that you can boldface the word eliminate?
I don't believe so. I think it all has to remain the same type of font
Okay.
in any type of ballot.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't think we can underline or boldface or italicize or anything like that.
okay.
What I could do, Madam Mayor, based on the proposed revisions, I could just read up to the yes and no portion, just so everyone is in agreement with the proposed language. And I'll just start at the beginning.
All right,
Okay, this would be City of Eastpointe Resolution Number 1885 Charter Amendment. The City of Eastpointe has determined that with the passage of time, it is in the best interest of the city to redefine the qualifications of the city manager by amending the city charter and eliminating the requirement providing the city manager shall be required to have at least 1 year experience as a manager or assistant city manager. It is hereby resolved, A, that the existing City of Eastpointe Charter, Chapter 3, Section 18, shall be amended to read as follows. Section 18, Manager. The manager shall be the chief administrative officer of the city. He shall be chosen by the council solely on the basis of his executive administrative qualifications. The manager shall, during his term of office, reside in the city of Eastpointe, provided, however, he shall be a citizen of the United States of America. The manager shall file a bond satisfactory to the council. It is further resolved that the proposed amendment to the city charter shall be submitted to the electors in the following form. Shall the charter of the City of Eastpointe, Chapter 3, Section 18, be amended to eliminate the requirement providing the manager shall have at least 1 year experience as a manager or assistant city manager? Yes, no. And the rest of the proposed resolution would remain unchanged.
Okay.
I'm sorry, before I make a motion, I have to ask, can council indicate how they feel about it with those changes?
With those changes, it's fine with me. I just think that they're going to get confused because the top one doesn't eliminate the residency requirement or the bond. But those aren't the things that you're changing. You're only changing the one thing.
Yeah.
The others, people don't know. When you do some education, you're going to just have to discuss with them that those other things are not required by law, so.
All right. Well, with that, I will make a motion to pass resolution number 1885 with the changes as read by the city attorney and direct him to forward it to the Attorney General's office for review.
Support.
Move to support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld.
Yes.
Lucido.
Yes.
Owens.
Yes.
Pixley.
Yes. Mayor and council reports, Mr. Kleinfeld.
I have nothing.
Ms. Lucido.
I have nothing.
Ms. Owens.
Nothing.
Mrs. Pixley has nothing. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Support.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld.
Yes.
Lucido.
Yes.
Owens.
Yes.
Pixley.
Yes.